Before we begin, it's important to note that this analysis is based on the incredibly detailed historical work compiled by Colonel F.J. Victor Rodrigo of the Spanish Army. His project provides a deep, military-focused perspective on the events that would plunge Spain into civil war. Our focus today is on a single pivotal moment, July 1936, and the failed uprising in Madrid. This one event, this failure, is what transformed a plan for a lightning-fast military coup into a long and brutal civil war. The inability to take the capital in those first 48 hours, well, it changed absolutely everything. So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with why Madrid was so important and look at the conspirators' plan. Then we'll cover the government's reaction, the actual failure of the uprising itself, the immediate consequences, and finally, how this single failure really marked the true beginning of the war. First things first, why Madrid? Why was the capital the absolute key to the entire nation? For any coup d'etat to have a chance of succeeding, taking the capital is always the #1 objective. If you fail to do that right at the start, you create a whole new and very dangerous reality. And this map really illustrates the 3 reasons why Madrid was so critical. First, you have to remember Spain was a highly centralized state. Controlling Madrid meant you controlled the country's political, economic, and even its cultural heart. Second, internationally, Madrid was the seat of the legitimate government. The rebels needed that for any kind of foreign recognition. And third, from a military standpoint, Madrid was the hub for all communications and logistics. It had the most powerful garrison on the peninsula. Taking it wasn't just an option, it was everything. Okay, so let's move on to the plan itself. General Emilio Mola, who was essentially the director of the whole plot, he envisioned something fast, decisive, really a lightning war. The idea was to win before any organized opposition could even get its bearings. This map shows you the final version of that plan. Now, Mola's first idea was for an internal coup, but that got shut down, so he pivoted to this, an external occupation. You can see converging columns from 4 different divisions, plus elite troops coming up from Morocco, all designed to wrap around and squeeze a capital that they assumed would be completely passive. They really thought it was just going to be a march to victory. This timeline really shows you how their thinking evolved. The initial concept back in April was a classic coup from the inside. Seize key buildings, declare victory. But that got postponed and then completely shelved after the government, which knew something was up, strategically reshuffled key military commands. That move forced Mola to switch to this much more complicated external invasion plan, a change that would end up being absolutely critical. And this quote really tells you everything about their core assumption. The entire operation was built on speed. Mola planned for just one single decisive battle for Madrid, and he thought it would be over in 4 days, tops. He just fundamentally miscalculated, expecting almost zero resistance from the army, the security forces, or the people. So now let's flip the script and look at the government side of this. Because far from being caught off guard, the Republican government was well aware that a conspiracy was brewing, and they had already started to prepare their response. As this map highlights, the government was on high alert. They had intelligence reports, they were watching officers, and they even got direct warnings, like a famous letter from Franco to the prime minister. The plot was basically an open secret, and the government correctly figured that the main danger wasn't from within, but was external, especially from the Army of Africa down in Morocco. So in response, the government put a clear 3-step strategy into motion. First, on July 16th, they ordered the Navy to blockade the Strait of Gibraltar. Simple enough. Second, they tried to neutralize the rebellion on the peninsula by ordering troops to stay in their barracks. But it was that 3rd step that created a huge political crisis. After a new prime minister, José Giral, took over, he caved to demands from socialist leaders and made the fateful decision to arm the people. And that brings us to the climax, the 19th and 20th of July. As the uprising finally kicked off in the capital, it was already doomed. It was a perfect storm of government preparedness and the conspirators' own profound disorganization. The uprising in Madrid was, in a word, chaotic. There was no clear plan, nobody seemed to know what their individual jobs were, communication and coordination were basically non-existent. And to make it all worse, a last-minute change of orders from Mola just threw more fuel on the fire of confusion. The leadership on the ground was hesitant right from the very start. The first critical failure happened right here, at the Montaña barracks. General von Hull, the man supposed to lead the uprising, failed to take the divisional headquarters. Instead, he set up his command inside these barracks, and in doing so, he effectively trapped himself. The government's reaction was immediate. Assault guards and loyal civil guards surrounded the building, and by nightfall, they had artillery in place. The siege was on. After a night of psychological warfare and a bombardment the next morning, loyalist forces stormed the barracks, and the strategic prize they found inside was immense. 55,000 rifle bolts, the one component needed to make a rifle fire. Combining these bolts with the rifle bodies already in city armories meant the government could now fully equip its brand new popular militias. It was a move that decisively tipped the balance of power in the capital. Now, the second major focus of the rebellion was over here, at the Campamento Barracks complex. And here, too, indecision was fatal. The rebel leaders just failed to act decisively, they didn't coordinate with Fanjul, and crucially, they couldn't neutralize the loyal air bases right next door at Getafe and Cuatro Vientos. Soon, they were also under siege, and by the afternoon of the 20th, this front had collapsed too. So with the rebellion in the capital totally crushed, the government didn't just sit back. Not at all. It immediately seized the strategic initiative and launched a powerful counteroffensive to secure the entire area around Madrid. For the nationalist cause in Madrid, the consequences were catastrophic. Their sympathizers were systematically hunted down. This meant that later, when Franco's troops finally reached the gates of Madrid that November, the famous Quinta Columna, the fifth column of internal supporters, was a complete myth. There was simply no one left inside the city to rise up. The government immediately went on the offense. On the 20th and 21st, the Ministry of War organized and sent out columns in every direction. As you can see, they moved to secure the vital mountain passes to the north to block Mola. They sent forces east to retake Alcalá de Henares and Guadalajara, and south to begin the siege of the rebels in Toledo. And this table really sums up just how successful that counteroffensive was. The Puigdentalist column quickly put down rebellions in Alcalá and Guadalajara. The Riquelme column bottled up the rebels in Toledo, and other columns from the east secured Albacete. In less than a week, the government had secured its entire rear, completely isolating Mola's forces in the north. So finally, let's just step back and assess the new strategic landscape. The failure of the coup in Madrid didn't restore order. No, it created an entirely new and, frankly, far more dangerous reality. The coup had failed to take its main prize, yes, but the government's victory came at a massive cost. By arming the popular militias and unleashing revolutionary forces just to save itself, the state, for all intents and purposes, disintegrated. As this map shows, Spain was now fractured. A revolutionary situation was boiling over, and the country was split in two. The lightning war had failed, but a long war had just begun. And this leaves us with one final critical question. At this exact moment, with the coup defeated, but the state shattered and the nation literally torn in half, was the path to a long, brutal, and destructive war already inevitable?